Antisemitism is the connective tissue across all terrorist and radicalized groups.
The one thing they have in common, they're all anti-Jew racists.
There was just an attack on the bus, and that was the bus we were supposed to actually take.
Oh my God.
We meet all 9 criteria for traumatic invalidation.
We win.
It's us versus them.
Welcome back to another episode of Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. 30-minute mentions. Same vibe, same tribe, shorter episodes. My guest today is a Harvard-affiliated clinical psychologist, trauma expert, and director of trauma training at Parents for Peace, a national nonprofit aimed at radicalization prevention and resilience. An Israeli-American and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, she is a mental health leader within Jewish communities, offering support and healing, which Lord knows are in high demand. She also co-hosts the post-October 7th podcast, Our Stories Matter, on which I was a guest last fall, and I'm delighted she's here with me today. Please welcome Dr. Miri Bar Halpern.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's nice to see you again. So your research and clinical work focus heavily on trauma, from terrorism, from war, from radicalization, a real barrel of laughs. So what drew you to this kind of heavy, serious work?
Growing up in Israel, I grew up during the Second Intifada. So I was always exposed to terrorist attack. You know, kind of that feeling you're sitting in a coffee place, you don't know when it's going to come. You're sitting not next to the area where it might hit you. I was always afraid taking the bus to school or to the beach after that. But it became normal, right? The abnormal became normal. I didn't have any PTSD symptoms and post-traumatic stress symptoms.
Really?
Yeah. Most Israelis are super resilient. It's the way we live is we're going to take each day to the fullest. We're not going to let terror win. And then I moved to the US and I had this moment. I moved here for my doctorate and I got my doctorate in Connecticut. And apparently not like Tel Aviv where you party all night. In Connecticut, the lights come up around 1 a.m. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I was in a party, and when the light went on, my instinct was to take cover.
What did that sensation remind you of?
It reminded me of all those times when you're in Israel and you're scared and you're functioning on an automat. It's this fight, flight, freeze response. And when people are exposed to trauma or to any type of traumatic event, it's an automatic nervous system response where either you fight, you flight, or you freeze. So to me, it was sitting on all those memories of growing up with this uncertainty. But when you're in Israel, you're not noticing it as much. Most of the people. I mean, obviously, the south of Israel throughout the years with all the terrorist attack that happened there and other places in Israel, there's definitely higher rates of post-traumatic stress syndromes. But other areas in Israel, until October 7th, at least, it wasn't as apparent.
If I may, how old were you during the Second Intifada? Like teenager or child?
Teenager, yeah.
Teenager.
So I was a child during the Gulf War. I was a child. The Second Intifada, I was in high school. I actually remember a specific situation. Usually on Friday, we would want to take the bus to the beach in Tel Aviv. It's pretty here in LA. It's easy. In Massachusetts, you say go to the beach. You need to plan for a day at least. In Israel, it's like, okay, let's grab our bathing suit, let's go. And I remember we're about to take the bus, and I have an older brother, and he came to pick me up from school, and he said there was just an attack on the bus, and that was the bus we were supposed to actually take.
Oh my God.
It's just part of the reality, Jonah. So when people say, hey, let's globalize the Intifada, this is the Intifada. I grew up knowing what Intifada really means.
Your perspective on this will be so interesting because so many people already feel that attack when someone says globalize the Intifada. That's got to be quadruply true for any Israeli who knows what that means. And then sort of even deeper for you who is an expert in these areas of trauma and PTSD and all of that. So what has it felt like on a personal level for you to see the normalization of those kinds of chants throughout the Western world?
So this is on intergenerational trauma, right? When we're born to this world, we already have what we call epigenetic, the vulnerability for some of us to trauma that our ancestor went to. So when people say globalize the Intifada, it triggers my nervous system. And it doesn't sit just on my experience. As you mentioned, I'm a third-generation Holocaust survivor. It sits on that trauma as well. Not to mention, so my husband lost his father in 9/11. That's part of my identity too. Right, you asked me for what brought me to the trauma world. All of those experiences brought me to the trauma world.
Well, thankfully you're doing it, even though the way you got there is, I wish we could have avoided. So Something important that you've been doing recently, you co-authored this research paper for the Journal of Human Behavior in the Social Environment on something called Traumatic Invalidation, and you were looking at it specifically within the Jewish community post October 7th. I read through the paper, and what I appreciated about it was sort of putting a name to something I think every Jew on earth has experienced to some degree or another, one facet of this thing. So if you would, for my audience, tell me what traumatic invalidation is, what you sought to accomplish with this paper, and what conclusions you were able to draw through your research.
So I'll give you the background story to understand kind of like how we got there. My co-author, Dr. Jackie Wolfman, and myself, we kind of collaborated on this article, and we waited a year to get it published because it was really important for us that it will be in an academic journal, peer-reviewed, not Jewish, because we knew that we need that stamp of approval. So on October 7th, out of my own need to do something, I wrote a message on an Israeli Facebook group saying, this is my cell phone number. If you need any support, I'm a psychologist, give me a call. I was flooded with phone calls and quickly mobilized a team of about 7 Hebrew-speaking clinicians. And for about a year, we provided free support, one-on-one groups, webinars, seminars. Immigrants came, we sat in school. If there was a need, we were there. And I started hearing those stories again and again that reminded me of what I heard from my non-Jewish, what we call regular trauma clients in my clinic. And that's the concept of traumatic invalidation. So it's when someone is not believing you or denying or ignoring your emotional experience after a traumatic event, and especially when it's coming from someone you care about, like a caregiver or a friend, that can actually prevent someone from healing from trauma. And it can lead to mental health issues, depression, anxiety, hypervigilance, all the way sometimes to self-harm, suicidality, and PTSD symptoms. Now, the best way to describe traumatic invalidation is gaslighting, but it's not just gaslighting. There is 9 different criteria that were coined by amazing researchers in psychology, Dr. Marsha Linehan and Melanie Hernay and Martin Bohos, and they actually researched that concept on different groups, different minorities, LGBTQ and Black people, but never on Jewish people. So I started collecting all the stories and basically showed how we meet all 9 criteria right now for traumatic invalidation.
We win.
Yeah. Right. When you think academic research, usually you get maybe 200 views over years, maybe 1,000, 2,000. We got in less than a month over 37,000 views of the article.
Wow.
And now it's actually, according at least to ChatGPT, it's ranked as the top 1% most viewed article across all disciplines. And I don't think it's because we're those amazing authors. I think, to your point, it gave the language. It gave people something that they can hold on to understand and to take to their non-Jewish colleagues and say, that's it. This is what I'm feeling right now.
Right. What did you hope to accomplish with the paper? Was it just about naming this thing and saying, hey, here's what Jews are going through? Or were you hoping to learn something that you could then act upon or do something with?
Both. So one point was to help people understand what they're going through. Right? When you think about trauma, the first thing is to be able to name it. I mean, if you don't know what you're going through, you'll feel like you're going crazy. So first is psychoeducation and really understanding, what am I going through and why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? But then there's a call for action, especially for the mental health world. How can you support your Jewish client? What can you do to help them? And it's not about asking for any special treatment. I'm actually not asking for any special treatment. I just want our trauma to be seen as any other trauma, as any other group, to have the same type of capacity to hold our pain as well, without what about, without, well, you caused it. Trauma is trauma.
Have you been able to see if you've had an impact, especially in spaces like with other psychologists or trauma centers or DEI spaces, these spaces that are supposed to be comforting and healing, that have for many Jews been a source of extra trauma through this traumatic invalidation? Have you seen this getting through?
Yes, I'm happy to say that overwhelmingly there is a very positive response to that. Even to the point that in Massachusetts, the State House just came up with recommendation to combat antisemitism, and it's in the recommendation for K-12. So I gave a testimony there, and they adopted a lot of the things that I recommended for the K to 12.
Can you give me some examples?
Schools like to say that they're trauma-informed and safe for everybody. If you're safe for everybody, you need to be safe for Jewish people as well. So creating curriculum that are mindful for Jewish students and Israeli students. There are a lot of Israeli immigrants in Massachusetts. How do we hold teachers accountable? What report system do we have in place? How do we make sure that Jewish students feel physically and emotionally welcome at schools? So they're working through different recommendations right now to make it even more specific per the schools and per the district. But for example, as you probably know, the Massachusetts Teacher Association has been something that has been extremely problematic in terms of the material that they've been using. So helping teachers being mindful of that and how that can cause harm and even more radicalization for our youth. So kind of like changes like that on a policy level have been really rewarding to see, but also on a personal level where I heard clinicians saying, I now can validate a Zionist. I now understand Jewish pain.
Baruch Hashem.
Right?
Where are you seeing the greatest need in this space right now, specifically within the Jewish community?
I think the mental health field needs to step up, and the healthcare. I mean, I don't know if you saw the recent statistics, but anti-Semitism is also in the healthcare and the medical profession. When you think about care, we need to be able to trust our doctors and nurses, right? So I would say mental health and healthcare will be one big area, and K to 12. Right? Because what we're seeing on college campuses right now did not start on college campuses. It started with education in the K to 12 world. So I think we need to have unbiased curriculum. We need to teach kids critical thinking to help them identify propaganda, to help them counter radicalization and extremism. And that absolutely starts with education.
And is that an area where you are also speaking and doing work in terms specifically of curriculum and education and that kind of thing? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Let's do that as well.
Yeah. Great.
I'm one of those October 8 Jews. Like, let's do everything we can to just save ourselves.
Okay. So let's dig into that. So before October 7th, how invested were you and your work in the Jewish community, if at all? Or was that only get flipped on after the, the before and the after?
I'm definitely a before and after. If you ask me who you are before October 7th, like what is my identity, I would always say I'm Israeli, I'm a mom, I'm a psychologist, like I have like my identity right there in front of me. And then after October 7th, I'm Jewish Israeli, I'm a mom, I'm a psychologist, and then so on and so on. I had to find a community because I lost my community. I joined a temple for the first time in my life, and all my work has changed. I mean, I actually quit my job as of June. I was a director of intensive outpatient program here in Massachusetts in a big clinic, and I quit my job so I can do advocacy and training and research on the mental health aspect of anti-Semitism and combating radicalization. I just don't see any other option.
That's amazing. So let's talk about combating radicalization. I mentioned the Parents for Peace organization with which you've been affiliated. Tell me about Parents for Peace and your role there, and then we'll dig into the radicalization piece. So let's start there.
Sure. So Parents for Peace is a nonprofit organization. They've been in this field for over 10 years. It was funded by a father that actually, their son is actually still in prison for life after committing a terrorist attack. It's your boy next door, literally, the neighbor.
Yeah. The
parents had no clue. And Miriam Churchill, who is the head of the organization, she really wanted to understand the pathway for hate. So she started meeting with families and with actually convicted terrorists to understand the pathway for violence. And from that, she created Parents for Peace. I'm the only Jewish person there. They actually heard one of my talks after October 7th, and Miriam said, "You don't have to fight alone. Let us help you." And the reason is that anti-Semitism is the connective tissue across all terrorist and radicalized groups. We literally have a Venn diagram to show it. So we have a helpline, and people can call and say, "I'm worried about my loved one, please help me." And we go through this assessment, and then they're being paired with a former. So we have some of my colleagues, we have a former neo-Nazi and a former jihadist. We have someone from Iran. So we have a lot of people who were in the hate world and got out. And then they're also being paired with a mental health provider. And it's really taking the addiction role model of people being addicted to hate and how can we change that?
Are they signing themselves up? Are they being brought there? Is law enforcement involved? How are these people becoming involved?
All of it. So we have referrals from law enforcement as well. We work very closely with them, the FBI, the police, and then usually parents or friends, siblings. Usually they don't want to be part of it because they're radicalized, right? So we need to find ways to connect with them. And I think this is where the role of our formers is so important. Arno and Mubin, who are my friends and my colleagues, are doing an amazing job really getting the rapport, getting connected with those individuals of concerns. And from that relationship, they're able to show them there is another path. There's another way.
Is there any nugget from, what's working there that you can recommend be implemented at scale to sort of filter through a student population at a college, for example,
Yes.
something like that?
Yes, and one of the initiatives we're working on is exactly that. How do we scale it up? Because anti-Semitism, as we said, it's not a Jewish problem. It's it's a non-Jewish problem that's affecting Jews. So you need to have the non-Jews to help to change their ways, right? So part of it is curriculum building, which we are doing actually right now. So we can get into the education piece, then a train-the-trainer model where we can help educators actually identify, and mental health professionals identify the warning signs of someone who's going under the pathway of violence and being able to intercept. So not shaming them. When you think about someone who is more vulnerable to radicalization, these are the ones that are don't have a sense of belonging. They have unresolved grievances. Some of them have mental health issues. There is a lot of different things that make someone vulnerable. And the way I see it, there's almost like this pathway just with like trauma, where if they go this way and they're being in those echo chambers online, they can be more prone to radicalization. But if they get the right support and get them to this way, now you're talking about maybe changing their pathway to more resiliency and post-traumatic growth.
Right.
So you're giving them a sense of belonging and meaning. And I think the problems, to your point about college right now, I mean, do I think everybody is radicalized there? No. I think most of them are brainwashed and have no clue what they're talking about. Those are the useful idiots, right? But they think they're fighting under social justice, this higher cause that a lot of them, for their own identity, are trying to find. So when you have someone say, oh, I'll tell you who's in charge of your issues. I'll tell you why you're suffering. It's the Jews. It's the Israelis. And here's what you can do, not just to make it better for yourself, but to make it better for the world. Come join us now. So they give them something to look for.
It's working better than we would hope it would. If you had unlimited resources to invest in a program, a direction, whatever, what would you do with them? Like where are we under supported, and where do you feel like we need to be focusing attention?
Prevention and intervention. So the prevention would be what we talked about before, to prevent radicalization and to prevent harm. I can't stress it enough how anti-Semitism, it's not just affecting us. And people, I think that a lot of people, and I don't know if you would agree with it, Jonah, they're kind of tired of hearing about anti-Semitism.
Definitely.
Right? But I think most people would agree that radicalization is not great for our kids. So if we can get people to see that it's really affecting every single person, non-Jewish people, because they're more risk of radicalization, then I'm hoping we can make more people interested in what's happening. So that's the prevention piece.
I want to drill into that because I think you're right, that when people hear, there's so much anti-Semitism, stop beating up Jews, they're like, all right, we get it. But then, at least I hear a lot in the Jewish world of like, anti-Semitism affects everybody. It's like a much bigger problem. But almost I hear that so much that's almost a cliche of, okay, so like, what does that even mean, really, that it affects everybody? It's a problem for everybody. And I think people actually mean different things when they say that. It sounds to me like you're saying it's a big problem because essentially its presence and virulence puts your child at risk of becoming like a radicalized hater.
Yes. So when you look at things from black and white way, right? Think about the AI, oppressed, oppressor. There's no nuance. And more than that, it's about putting people against one another. It's us versus them. And when you look at us versus them, you start looking at as people as their problems and not as human beings anymore. So anti-Semitism is the gateway to radicalization in that regard, because it is the oldest kind of like hate in the book of us versus them. We are the others. There's no nuance, there's no gray area. And if you have, we always hear if you tolerate hate for one group, you're going to tolerate for other group. Look what's happening around us. hate in general and extremism is being normalized. The fact that people are actually have some sort of understanding to murder, they're justifying murder of Jews because they're a Zionist, I think tells us everything we need to know about society today and how radicalized they become.
Scary stuff. So I came on your podcast, as I mentioned, Our Stories Matter. Where did that come from? How's it going? And, was I really amazing on it or what?
Well, obviously you were amazing. There's no doubt about that. And I told you that before. I've learned so much from you and your journey within the Judaism world, and how loud and proud you are. And I think that affected a lot of our audience. And I know it affected me. I think every single person who went to our podcast, I took something from that episode, and I incorporated in who I am, in my new identity. Our Stories Matter is not something that I started. My co-host Susie has. It's been an ongoing podcast from Trauma Informed Learning Alliance. And I joined in the last season, the last 2 seasons. Susie and I met during a delegation to Israel, and we're just trying to figure out how can we get the voices out there, but from more psychological perspective. And it's really about the journey to post-traumatic growth. So when you think about people in general, their resilience, right? We can bounce back. But post-traumatic growth is when you give meaning to an event, when you're doing something. And in my world, what I really believe in is that the best antidote for trauma is being able to take control in doing something. So Our Stories Matter was my way of doing. And, it also combined a lot of the poems that I wrote after October 7th. And it was about getting to know stories and bringing them to the front. So the season you were on, we interviewed Jews and Arabs and Christians about the way they healed or tried to heal after October 7th through doing. And then this specific season that we just ended was about courage on campuses. And we interviewed students and former radicalized people about what's happening specifically on college campuses and what can be done. Because I think a lot of us, we mean so well and we have all those talks and we give workshops, but there's no call for action. It's almost like you come to this event and like, oh my God, this speaker is amazing. I can listen for him 2 hours. And then you leave the event and okay, now what? Right. So I want to focus on what can people do and not just preaching to the choir, basically.
Something you just said reminded me. You mentioned earlier this Venn diagram where about radicalization, that like at the center of everybody's radicalization, the one thing they have in common is they're all anti-Jew racists. I haven't heard that articulated in quite that way. I mean, is there literally like a Venn diagram that's like digital that you can send me? Like, I want to share that. Please, because I feel like that's a concept that's really important that I don't think is out there. I don't think that's something people are really thinking about or considering as being, valid.
No, and we have so Parents for Peace, we actually have the data through our helpline. Almost every single call we get, not 100%, but almost every one of them, doesn't matter if it's the far left, the far right, Antifa, whatever phone call we get that is related to radicalization, there's some content related to anti-Semitism.
It's crazy. So it's one of those questions I get all the time. People are like, well, why? Like, why is everybody so anti-Semitic? And I guess your answer would be what you said earlier, which is, it's sort of the default hate because it's been there so long. It's like, it's the easiest one to tap into of the us versus them. Do you think there's more to it than that?
I do. I mean, yes, I heard someone saying it's the first type of racism is anti-Semitism. And I agree with that. So according to one of my colleagues, and also someone that I interviewed, Yasmin Muhammad, who are not Jewish, they're saying that they think it's actually coming from jealousy, which I found very interesting. I never thought about it from that perspective as a Jewish person. Oh, really? Yeah. I don't know. It's like, what do you have to be jealous about? It's like, I see people as people usually. So I don't think that because I'm Jewish, I'm more successful. I think because the way I grew up, the way my parents raised me, my own set of values is what got me to where I am. But maybe that's really like values, right? Jewish people have very similar values, like shared connection. Maybe, I don't know. But I think right now it's more about, it's cool. There's more anti-Semitism because it's cool and people want that sense of belonging to be on the cool side of the club. And we see it also from some Jewish people as well. And I think part of it is their fear and their need for safety. It's almost like they had to be anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist, which in my opinion is exactly the same, in order to be accepted in society today.
It's sort of, I've thought about it a little bit like smoking cigarettes, that, it used to be very cool, normalized, everybody's doing it. And there was no social cost for doing so until, there was a decades-long sort of very pointed movement to make it uncool. And the culture completely flipped. And now it's, completely taboo to be smoking a cigarette, at least in America. Not quite the same in Israel. But,
No.
I don't know how we have that, pervasive and pointed an approach as with cigarettes, but it does feel like a similar kind of vibe. It's something I think about.
It's a good metaphor. I think we don't have enough accountability.
Right. There's no cost. There's nothing bad happens to you for doing it.
Not at all. In fact, some of people would actually say, yeah, you did it. Good job.
That's right. You get the pat on the back for being a righteous hero.
And to the addiction piece, again, it's the high, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the same pathways that working on the addiction mechanism in the brain.
So now that you've published this big research paper, what's next? What are you looking to look into next? Are you expanding on that work? Are you going in another direction? Are you taking a break from research? Where are you at?
We are doing a huge survey now across the US on colleges to get more data about traumatic invalidation. So I'm really building specific training and workshop to do two things. One is to give Jewish people the skills and the tools to combat this burnout, the vicarious trauma, the traumatic invalidation piece, all the things that we've been going through, because this has been a very long marathon and our nervous system actually never recovered from October 7th.
Yeah.
Right. There's one event after another. But then also to educate other people of what they can do and to call out people to stand up. I need people to stand up for me when I'm not in the room. I think this is even more important. So a lot of calling for action for people to stand up and do something.
That's fantastic. When you craft these workshops, you're going into, you said, healthcare providers, et cetera. Are they coming to you? Are you finding, an appetite to want to improve situations, or are you having to sort of knock on doors and say, you need this?
I think the fact that the article went viral, and I've been getting literally emails from all over the world, literally from South Africa. I got an email. So I think it hits a chord. I think people can really resonate with that and they're asking for more information. And then just word to mouth. I've been doing a tour all over different colleges around the US about that aspect of mental health and anti-Semitism, traumatic invalidation. So people hear about it. I'm trying to bridge divide in administration and staff, because if it doesn't start at the top, we can't expect our students to be able to cope with it as well. So I'm trying to foster those dialogues for leadership and creating organizations that are trauma informed, that understand the pain and the trauma of every minority, including Jewish people. We're not that different.
In order to combat this traumatic invalidation effectively, there's a level of education about Jews or about the conflict or that's required, or do you not need that and you can just sort of grasp the concept and that's enough?
No, you actually have to understand Jewish people. I think that, people think of Jewish as religion, and
right.
It's ethno-religion. You and I know that, and you talk so much about Judaism and what it means. And there's so many different aspects of being Jewish. Mm-hmm. And I think more people need to understand those nuances. Just like we do those deep dive about any other minority group, people should be culturally sensitive to what is Judaism, what is Zionism, how it is part of someone's identity. And when you're putting it down or attacking a core part of someone's identity, you're actually causing harm. I don't care how you call it. It's causing harm.
Right. How do you not get burned carrying all of this with you, not just as a person dealing with all this, but as a specialist in this area that is, as we said at the outset, so heavy and the work is so unending and there's such an urgent need for?
It's a great question. So there's a few things. When I started feeling the burnout as a therapist, and I was literally hypervigilant for a long time sitting with my clients, Jewish and non-Jewish clients. And it's an interesting balance these days being a Jewish therapist, because the boundaries are very blur with Jewish clients. So I had to do a lot of grounding sometimes before sessions. I started to do yoga, which I was never a yoga person, but I needed something to calm my nervous system down. And now I'm kind of noticing, I'm doing these check-ins with myself where, listen, this is a very long marathon. We don't have a lot of people cheering for us on the sidelines. So I'm trying to reserve my energy to where should I give talks, who should I engage with, and what is right for me. I know that I'm not a protest person. I tried it. Did not end well for me to get into conversation with people in protest, but I'm great if you put me in front of a state house or committees or a bunch of people that actually wants to learn. I can do that. So I've learned how to balance my resources and then to do a check-in. Am I available to do that today emotionally? And how do I balance that? What do I need to do for my own self-care? Can I lean into my family and my kids and enjoy and hold that dialectic of being with them with joy while also fighting and carrying some sadness? And I think those check-ins are really important.
It's a tall order, but you seem to be doing it with flying colors. Dr. Miri, thank you so much for being here and for enlightening us and for doing the incredibly important work that you are doing. I know we're all grateful for it.
Thank you so much, Jonah. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, she's a mensch. It's been 30 minutes. I'm Jonah Platt. Take care of each other, guys.